Sometimes you hit the road in summer and drive. You just keep going. No place particular in mind. On drives like these you see colours in the country you've missed for years. Burnt umber, sienna, French blue and yellow ochre. Vermilion, and pictures start to take shape in the forefront of your mind. The heat hits your face through the wound down window. The smell of dry heat, petrol, tar and earth. Once in a lifetime you might just get lucky and sense you've met yourself in the oncoming lane on some journey heading back. The world deaccelerates as you see yourself coasting towards you. It feels like you're meeting for a brief moment, and then whoosh, you're past yourself and once more alone, trapped in the here and now in space and time, and your past starts creeping through your windscreen like some Venturi kind of effect. It was a hot day in the late July of 1975. We drove in a turquoise Chrysler Avenger out of town on a busy East Coast road, along with a line of traffic my dad referred to as the West Riding Banger Brigade. Down the dip called Nafferton Slack, then quickly rising up past a roadside cafe, and on for a further mile past wheat fields and the fruit fields on the near side of the road, and entered the East Yorkshire village called Nafferton. I can recall a boy called James that moved that day to live at Nafferton, aged 9 years. At the time our sociologically termed nuclear family was complete. My dad, Jim, 42, mum, 39, and sister Claire, 11 years, and then there was Jasper, our dog, a liver and white Springer Spaniel. Jasper's pedigree kennel club name evades me, but it ended with the title Pride of Mablethorpe. He was from a narrow pedigree bloodline, resulting in a highly sprung, neurotic psychopath of a dog. In the 1970s, both kids and stray dogs roamed the streets, even the odd escaped cow from the village slaughterhouse. With fewer cars on the roads in those times and even less insight into the risks that children may encounter while out and about, it was less frowned upon. Perhaps particularly so in rural backwaters like Nafferton. It was thus a normal event to roam both wild and free. Nafferton always stank in summer, as the winds brought nearby pig farm smells on the breeze and the stench of offal from a strange knacker's yard over towards the world's village of Killam. Some days you could hear the screaming cattle in the nearby slaughterhouse, and the frothing blood oozed creepily across the pavement like a river into the roadside grate. A blonde-haired youth with dead blue eyes and white cap often seemed to be spraying down equipment in the yard behind the cattle grate. In my mind he looked more Africa Corps than local. Over the fruit fields rose a great tethered barrage balloon. It simply hovered in the blue tranquil summer skies above the strawberry fields at the edge of the village. And all through that decade, embossed with 3 red letters, PYO, pick your own. I imagine it could have been more of a sales pitch to potential kid or dog nappers. My canine brother Jasper had soon integrated into the local gang of dogs. There was Hamish, a basset hound who regularly called at the house, and off they'd trot on what I imagine were Walt Disney-style adventures together. On one occasion, Jasper returned home late for tea, with a note tied to his dog collar reporting, "If I see your dog in my field again, I will shoot him." I've since found out the dynamic couple even took the local bus into town on one occasion. Jasper could often be found outside at the side of our house, sliding down the bankside towards the road, rubbing his hindquarters on the grass. He'd adopt a sit-up-and-beg type posture that must have simultaneously soothed his worm-infested anus, but resulted in his swollen lipstick gland becoming visible. This, of course, amused or shocked the onlookers walking past. The canine clan included a characterful brindle-marked Jack Russell that hung around the swing park called Pip. He performed tricks like pretending to have a limp for sympathy. There was Casper down Lowthorpe Lane, and generally tethered but perched on walls, surveying the scenery like a lord. He was a sizable black lab that occasionally escaped, but alas sadly met his demise many years later, being ran over by the butcher's van. On many levels, 1970s Nafferton was an insular village, facing many changes with new housing developments and their new residents in an expanding social demographic. Some local nosers were clearly pushed out by this process of rural migration, but for the main it was a friendly place. We lived in a 1960s stock-mock Georgian house, number 8, situated on a close that had previously been akin to common land, where the travelling fair would have once stopped and pitched, hence the name Fairfield Close. Nafferton then had a flour mill and many local farms and amenities to sustain a sense of identity and self-sustainable economic functionality. A number of family-run construction firms, coal merchant, garages and tradesmen that plied their skills and services. The shops and 4 public houses were vibrant, and even the Methodist chapels and parish church drew plentiful congregations. A new boy can have its own symbolic terms of cultural reference. Being an outsider and a newcomer were themes that have been recurrent throughout my life. I travelled to Nafferton via birth in 1966 Cumbria and a 3-year stint in northeast Lincolnshire. Many transient bonds along the way seem to have been made with settings and people. I recall being with my dad having the first day of school pep talk about trying to make him proud, listen to the teacher and generally pull things around from my previous school debacles, and I promised with covert reserve that I'd try. The first day at Nafferton Juniors as the new boy, there were various fringe benefits and some cultural conventions that occur to you. The new boy provokes inquisitive attentions from the girls and the subsequent threat to the established order. This said, I was alarmed a little that there looked to be the remains of a POW camp nearby the school site, and a boy with a shock of blonde hair and blue eyes running totally amok on the playing fields that day with a suspiciously Germanic surname. I wondered had some form of cross-pollination during the war occurred, or worse, collaboration. It was also of note that during the lunchtime the kids all shouted abuse at an old man on a bike, and they said he was a local kiddie fiddler. It would be no surprise he was resident close to the school. Worries apart, I soon found settling in on day one had its own hidden curriculum. I'd impressed the girls with my legs, being the only boy in shorts. Proved I was a comic fool by getting a chair stuck embarrassingly somehow to my head. Drawn uncertain praise from the teacher with the pictures I'd drawn in the maths lesson, and managed to smoke my first cigarette as a challenge without being sick. On the way home from school I was invited to accompany some of my new peers, and at some point near the church parsonage I was challenged to a fight. He was a small loud chap with an adult vocabulary and a strange exotic appearance I found alluring. I simply sat on the smaller aggressor in front of his peers and agreed it would be announced as a draw at school the next day. I think I learnt some lessons in diplomacy from my dad, but certainly this clearly had been a full day at school. Having survived day one, I felt I'd maybe not let my dad down becoming one of the gang, being the most sensible but inevitable part of my new village life. Looking back, there were some emerging things for later life, some good and some bad. The tension of fitting in and pleasing others, the seeking of attention both good or bad, a sense of empathy but difference. But of course this was all unknown stuff to the headless 9-year-old boy roaming the streets of his new home range. I had become a naff-jipe, whatever that meant, and we were only larking or laking, as it sounded to my unattuned immigrant ears. The close had 8 properties and everyone was different, but very family-orientated. Ball games, blocky 1, 2, 3, skateboarding and playing bang bang you're dead type war were to become regular themes of entertainment. Next door lived some old friends of my parents, Frank and Wendy. They had 2 boys, Mark and James. It's with great sadness I've heard this week that Frank passed away. Over time the faces and characters of childhood are moving on up, but I'm sure they stand together right now in a tap room in the sky enjoying a drink and a humorous catch-up on all that's been and come to pass down here. One thing was for sure, I quite liked this place. It seemed like the Wild West, or more aptly Eastern Front, but little did I know then it would become my final childhood home. We are all journeymen of types walking through life, blind to the true meaning of the connections we make, often until it's beyond our scope or simply just too late. The tragedy is we can never truly return in life, as it's never the same, never quite as good. As for PYO, well, as my dad continued to work, play, laugh and drink his way through life, the blur of life at home between the melee of family dogs and friends became often confused. I was referred to as Jasper by mistake a few too many times, much to the amusement of friends. I guess I'd helped pick his name and I liked it, a nickname that stuck. In life as a child, you don't always get to pick your own house, home, name, or very much. You're dragged by others and caught by the inertia of matters beyond your control. Your voice is often small and inconsequential. Choice is a powerful thing. You cast stones on the village pond of life and live with the ripples, for better or worse. Clearly we trust parents to make good choices on our behest. Happily, I'm sure they did.
Well, you can paint this world a colour, and you can see yourself that way. You can chance an open frontier, or you can turn, look away. But there is nothing left quite as open as the state of your heart, of your heart. So long, Mr. Sometimes. So long, Mr. Sometimes. Sometimes I do him right, sometimes I do him wrong. Back in the beginning, just the other day, well, I found an eaten apple on the ground where it lay, and 100 feet have passed just walking on their way. And I thought that Eden had come today. So long, Mr. Sometimes. So long, Mr. Sometimes. Sometimes I do him right, sometimes I do him wrong. Well, I'm going to Sundance, I'm going to Sundance, Mr. Sometimes. So long, Mr. Sometimes. So